everybody. Nice to be here. And the year was 1970, and we just heard there the world was in a fuel crisis, and people were forced to get petrol on certain days depending on the number plate numbers. And I had a small 50cc Honda P50E, and do you know what that's like? A push bike with a motor in the back wheel. And I had enough petrol in the car to last about a year because of that. And I fitted foot stands at the back, so my wife and I would take her down to see her mother. I live at Netley, and we used to go down to Semaphore Park on this little bike. And one time at first, because it didn't have any foot pedal, I said, look, why don't you try side saddle? And anyway, we were going along Military Road and the cop pulled us over. And he said, oh, that's pretty dangerous. Well, we were doing about 25 Ks. And anyway, then a friend at Flinders Uni, he made these axles, he screw cut them metric, and I just took the nuts off and screwed them on, and we're back into business, you know. And it used a lot of, it didn't use much petrol, so we're going a long way, and there was plenty of doom and gloom about the petrol, and they said the reserves might run out, and it was only yesterday I said to my wife, that was 50 years ago. It's gone like that. Anyway, I've been an enthusiast of all things on four wheels since I was 5 years old. And when I was 12, I got up on a Saturday morning and used to go out and get the newspaper and lay on the sitting room floor and read the cars, what was for sale. Anyway, one day there was 2 cars for sale. They were $1 each, so 10 cents. That's right, yeah, 10 cents. And I ran into Dad, and he was in bed, and he said, oh, it'll be gone by now. My heart dropped, and I accepted it. Anyway, I went back and reading the cars. I was 12. And anyway, he came out and he said, well, aren't you going to come? And so we went down there, and it was a 1924 a Durant, and it was made into a buckboard, and it had the engine had no head on it, and I paid the money, and they had to have a tax stamp on it, and it was pushed on, and when I got home it was off, and my dad said and you could see where it was pressed on, and obviously they didn't worry about paying the taxes, you know. And anyway, by that afternoon, Dad had the car running, and I used to drive it up and down the driveway, up and down. We lived at Belair, and and I used to do the signs for the RGA store for, you know, flour or specials, and they put it on the window, and I blew the whole lot on petrol. So anyway, 1967, I left the Advertiser, and I got a job at Flinders University in the physical sciences, and I was not used to having morning and afternoon tea breaks, and at that time the tea break in the morning was about a half an hour, and it was the tea break in the afternoon was half an hour, and I think lunch was getting close to an hour. And anyway, not being a sporting person, I'd sit there and they'd all sort of arguing about who was winning the footy or cricket or something, and it was over my head. And because of this whole thing with the petrol, I thought, gee, I ought to build an electric car. And so I told a friend, at lunchtime, I said, I'm thinking about building a little electric car. And he said, oh, really? And I told him what I was thinking about doing. And the printed circuit motor and just belt, expanding belt drive. And anyway, he went off and told unbeknown to me, told the person in charge of the whole physics anyway. And then he came to me and said, would you like to give a talk? And so I said, oh yeah, I'll give a talk. So I went, it was planned this particular day, and it was during lunchtime. And when we went into one of the theatres, they're very steep, and I think there were 125 people could get in there. It was standing room only. And I thought, oh, I've hit the nail on the head here. And so I got quite excited by that. And then afterwards they had other speakers. They got others wanted, it was just when solar people, you could make a solar panel or use mirrors and all this sort of caper, and they were doing just sort of small things, very basic. And so that night I went home and started really thinking about building this electric car. And then and it took quite a few months before anything sort of really happened, because they put in for some money to the Industrial Research Institute. And anyway, they got $22,000, and our house cost about $11,500 with the land and the house. And I told somebody, I said, God, that's about $1 million nowadays. Anyway, they worked it out, it wasn't, because it's only about $125,000 now, that $22,000. And I said, well, if you could buy a house, that money, the value's there, isn't it? So anyway, I was able to work out a few things, and there were the tiles in the electronics model shop where I was working there. They were a foot square, so it made it really easy to work out how long to make it and how wide to have it. And I wanted it to be smaller, shorter than a mini miner. And so it was 8 feet long, which is, where are we? 2.5 metres, spot on, yep. And it was, I sort of sat chairs there to see how we could sit in it and all this, and it was pretty small. And then I made it 5.5 inches wider than a mini, because I was a mini enthusiast, and still am probably. And so I worked all these things out, and then they came up, this other chap, he said about hydraulic motors, which I wasn't really happy about, because a friend who lived down the road of Dad's, he said, I'll read this here, printed circuit motors had been invented, and I was impressed by their light weight and efficiency. Keeping the weight down was important, so I employed a space frame design. There were a few changes made to my design by others over which I had no control, the major one being the use of hydraulic motors for the drive. And I'd been taught by a person who spent his life in hydraulics that these motors should only be used in an industrial sort of venue where it can be serviced every month or every 3 months or whatever, not like a car where it's, you just don't, he said, look, it's only got to have a grain of sand in there and the whole thing's finished. Anyway, so we used those, and then I drew up I did most of the drawing at home at night, so, and I made the legs, designed those where the motors run and it all fits into the suspension, and I turned the where the front suspension, how the arm fits and with the rubber and it bounces up and down, I turned it around 90 degrees and I worked it all out from there. And because these legs had the wheels on them and with the reduction drive. And anyway, my calculations were pretty right because it used to go all right and pull up and start and you could do all right in it. My design was to use many minor parts such as wheels, steering, rubber suspension, a whole lot of bits and pieces were purchased in Adelaide from Lay Parts, being a parts supplier of Leyland Motor Corporation of Australia. There were 3 sections to the vehicle: the centre battery box and seating, the rear drive motors with gearboxes in swinging arms of aluminium included the printed circuit 7 horsepower motor and the front steering and control section. So there were 3 separate places. And unfortunately this system was never used afterwards, and all the vehicles modified after the one I designed and built were petrol driven and not designed for electric motivation. Consequently, thousands of dollars of grant money was wasted because they had to always alter there was no room where the motor went and had to pull out things and change everything, which was sort of a bit sad really, because with the one I designed you could change the back, the centre or the front, you know, you could demount anything, yeah. I designed the rear, I've mentioned the rear suspension was at 90 degrees to the front suspension to allow the trailing arms to have the hydraulic motors. My father came to work with me and we machined the aluminium castings as well as the electromechanical parts that were done in conjunction with the electronics technician on the project. My cousin was a pattern maker at Holden's and he was that excited to do the pattern work, you know, and they came out really lovely. The frame was made with central tube backbone which had 2 C-sections spot welded together and used as a tunnel for cables and the control rods. My suggestion that a manifold be made and operated by a small control lever through the central chassis tube was taken up, eliminating having high pressure hydraulics inside the cabin area. The vehicle was 140 millimetres wider than the Mini to give the interior a more spacious feel. This is an interesting one, when the printed circuit motor was to be purchased, being manufactured in France, there was, you probably remember, there was an embargo made by Australia on buying anything from France because of the bomb testing on Muro Atoll in the Pacific Ocean. Anyway, someone at the uni knew someone in England and they went and bought something from France and then shipped it straight out to Australia. And I thought, so much for embargoes. It wasn't even a problem. Yeah. This 7 horsepower printed circuit motor was very efficient. It was a 145 volt DC motor. Now the one I was playing around with was just a small one that they're just in a winding windows up or whatever, you know. But this one was about that diameter and had 1 disc in there with several layers of material with the copper joined on the edges. And anyway, my dad was there one day and he thought, oh, I'll just put a AA cell across it. And that 145 volt motor started turning with a AA cell motor, battery. Anyway, then they got a power supply out and they worked it to half a volt and the motor would rotate on half a volt. It's weird, yeah. During the course of the building of the vehicle, I discovered a vacuum forming company called Better Built Products. Now, I go past there occasionally, but they're not there anymore. It's run by the owner, Kevin Koch. I was impressed by the small trailers he built, which were vacuum formed in ABS sheet, which is acrylonitropentadiene styrene. He showed me examples of the dies or forms, and I set about making a die for the front of the vehicle. Using compressed pine board stacked side by side, I was able to shape the die to conform with the front dimensions and the windshield lower frame. I took the die to Kevin Kosh and he drilled holes in it to so as it would work, pull the plastics in once it was heated up, and the moulding could be trimmed to fit the front of the vehicle, and the material is quite lightweight and the thickness about 2.5 mils. The seats had to be very shallow because the batteries, there were 12 batteries under the seat. Like this box was under the, well, it's still there. There's 4 boxes and they each have three batteries in them. And so the seat needed to be shallow, and we were on holidays in Victoria. I visited a wrecking yard and found these seats of a Toyota Hiace suited to the job. And I've got here, I had been reading car magazines since the mid-50s, and there was some articles on safety cars in the early 60s where it was found that high-back seats would be much safer, avoiding neck injury. So I put these seats in there, and they're sort of standard now, aren't they? Yeah. I think they said to me, what have you got seats like that for? Yeah. The windshield and windshield frame came from a Morris Marina. These are all brand new parts. These cars were available, and I'd just go down to lay parts, and the man there, Mr. Dunlop, he was so good. If you go in there and there's nothing, there was no problems getting any parts. It was fabulous. I decided to use aluminium wheels to save a few kilograms and have Michelin tyres fitted that had a lower coefficients of friction. In '74, I left the electric vehicle program and went overseas. Kevin Kosh, the better built owner, had teed up for me to meet a man in Detroit, Michigan, who was building ABS bodies for cars. I contacted this man. He told me he had just sold the business, but said that I should visit Sunspot Plastics just out of Toronto in Canada, which I did. The laboratory manager at Flinders Uni believed that ABS plastics were not suitable for vehicles over 2.5 metres. I mentioned this to the owner of Sunspot Plastics, and he laughed and he said, "Come and see this, Viv." And I went into the factory, and they had a huge vacuum forming facility. I'd never seen anything like it before. And I was taken into the plant and showed the way they built caravans, 12 metres long. And the ABS sheets were 14 metres long. Big sheets. And they were 12 minutes, and they would mould them into the caravan. Yeah, 12 minutes. The supplier of the sheets was Borg Warner from Parkersburg, West Virginia, and representatives of that company were at Sunspot Plastics facility that day. They were travelling in several cars and wanted me to go back with them to the USA. I travelled with one of the Borg Warner men and stayed at his home for a week. During this time, I was able to view plastic vehicles of all sizes, even where no steel chassis were used. There were vehicles outside being tested in extremes of heat and cold. They were keen to show me a special vehicle that was built using ABS, but were unable to find it, or anybody knew where it was sent. The whole day was used to find somebody who may have a clue. And we went to a radio station, and they broadcasted it. Several times during that day we went to a tyre dealer and they knew nothing. The people from Borg Warner who I was with found out from someone else that the tyre dealer had changed hands at some time. I learned eventually the car was buried under the used tyres. And it was unbelievable. When I returned home, my wife was working in the materials laboratory at Chrysler at Tonsley Park, brought home a magazine of the automotive industry in America, And lo and behold, there was the car on the front of the magazine. This meant it wouldn't have been in the magazine if I hadn't been with the guys from Boiled Water. Now back to the original Flinders electric vehicle. I know this vehicle was on display at the National Motor Museum in Birdwood for several years, after which my dad had it sent up there, after which it disappeared. Many years later, I received a telephone call from a person who now privately owns it, and I visited him several times at his home. Thank you, Bruce. Yeah, so, yeah. And it was said before, at present the vehicle is on display in the foyer of the Flinders University at Tonsley. Yeah. Thank you. Oh, yes, please.
So if you just press that one, so
all right.
Click them through.
Okay. Oh, that's an ad for me. There's a front of a mini subframe, and I cut it and I fitted 5.5, well, it's 5.5 inches, so whatever that is, yeah, and widen it out. And there's the new steel there, and the front drive, so I've welded that all up. And there's the 25 square or 1 inch square, and it was sort of an exciting job to do too. You know, you think about it. Sometimes I could hardly sleep at night because I was keen to get to work. And that's the rack and pinion steering. I made that longer. And there's some, I can't quite see that. It was all nickel brazed. And there was a racing car chap on South Road near the Porsche dealer there on a side street. And he used to build Formula 3000 race cars. And I went and saw him, and he said, use nickel brazing rod, you'll be right as rain. And I read a book on space frames, and I welded them up. And anyway, I thought I'll do this nickel bronze, and I did one with ordinary brazing. And the original brazing one, you just bent it in the lathe and it just broke straight away. And with that, you could go back and forth and it would break the part of the steel tube away. So it's amazing. Oh, that's the centre section there, that tube where all the controls went down the centre. Yeah. So that's the front or the back. Yeah. That's the battery cradle. The batteries are they're a tight fit, and so it could only be the amount of room there. They're trying to keep it all not sloppy or anything. There they are. Yep. I can hardly believe it's sort of 50 years ago, you know. And there's the machining parts up from a mini miner because it was all being changed around with the back arms. Yeah. It starts looking like a car. Some of the times it would start looking like it and you got really excited then. And the battery. There's the the patterns and the castings for the swing arms at the back. There it is there. Yeah, so the round here, that's where it pivoted on the chassis, and the drive, the motor was on the other side, and then the brake, where the output shaft was. It's my dad working there. Yeah, there's this end is the casting, and there's the hydraulic motor on on this side of the line, and that's where the wheel, oh, there's the tyre there, yeah. And there it is, it's starting to look like something. A dear old Dad there. This was all done on a, what are those cameras that used to just... Polaroid? Yeah, Polaroid, yeah. And sometimes they come out good and other times they didn't come out too good at all. That's the permit we got for the car. Oh, yeah. Yes. This is the printed circuit motor. And that's the little pump on the end there. And that's the first time the wheel ever moved. This is the back suspension. The battery boxes. This is the front of the vehicle with the controls in there. It's a bit dark, isn't it? If you had a camera now, it wouldn't make any difference, would it? Oh, that's when I was working out the front of it, and for the design of the plastic. This is the first time it ever came out into the light. Yeah. As you can see, it's pretty short. And that's under its own power. And this is when I was doing the shaping the front body part. They kicked up a bit because of the powder everywhere. And this is at the vacuum forming factory. This is heat the sheet up. It's very sort of not liquid but very pliable. Then they squirt water on it to cool it down, and usually you have to have a puff of a cigarette. Yeah. Not allowed to do that now. This is the last day I ever worked at the uni. It was pretty towy. Yeah, so that took about 4 years, and it went quick, and it worked quite well too. Yeah. Well.
So does anybody have any questions for Viv?
What
Yeah,
kind
Dan.
of top speed could you get out of it in testing?
Well, I'm not really sure, but I've got an idea they would do about 40 miles an hour. Mm. Mm.
Did it have any sort of noise, or was it, could
Yeah.
you hear the motor, or could you hear the hydraulic boxes?
You could hear the hydraulic, the drive itself, yeah. It's sort of like a whirring noise.
Fairly
And
quiet?
relatively, yeah. Dad used to take it home, and then one time there he picked me up and we drove up Marion Road, and it was really funny because we pulled up at one of the major roads there, and you parked right under, we were sitting down quite low, and there was a brand new car alongside us, and it was going clunk, 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 because we were right near the wheel well of the front wheel. Because once you stopped, it was just dead silent, and you could hear everything. Yeah, it was pretty good. Yes, sir.
What progressed from this vehicle as far as Flinders Uni?
Oh.
Is that they went to those AEVA vans or something?
Yes, they got into, what they did, they, like a pancake, packed the motors. The motors were made here, just in, it was just in the west of Adelaide, and they would make, they copied the system, and they did a pack of 4, and I think that you've got one with 6 in it, isn't it? Is there 6? Yeah, 6.
Yeah, the Bedfords was 6.
Yeah,
6
and
rotor.
so they, and then this chap they were making the motors here, and so that was, but I'd gone by then, and I'd sort of looking at other things. Yeah.
Yeah, straight after that car, they actually took the motor out of that one and they converted a Fiat. So it was a petrol car, they took it out and converted it and used that motor and another one. So it was a 2-rotor little Fiat. That was their next car. Then they went to the Bedfords after that.
I went back there to work. They wanted somebody 2 days a week or something for 3 months to do something, and I went back there, and it was sort of different. Although it intrigued me because they were always, they had several cars there, and they'd pull the motor out, and then, because it was not even made for electric motors, you know, it was sort of a strange setup, you know.
Yeah, they're conversion.
Yeah, conversions, and it was all the wrong size, and whereas this one, it all sort of fitted with the car, you know, it was designed to be that way, and anyway, that's, I wasn't there, I didn't have a say in it, and I was pursuing other things, yeah.
You were using printed circuit motors.
Yes.
So they were interruled with the wheels, were they? Each of the rear wheels?
No, that was the one that was sitting in, there was, on the film, the wheels were there, and the motor was in the centre, a round thing, it was about that round.
There was a differential.
The differential works because you got 2 wheels working with the same pressure. So, yeah, yeah. So it just works exactly right, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, Matthew.
Comment on a question.
Yes.
I think you pioneered the mini moke, didn't you? By the look of it. They must have stolen your idea.
No.
Secondly, what was the range that you could get on your batteries at that time?
Now that's interesting because I wasn't there. I was overseas for quite a while, but my dad, he was there, and I know that with the vans they were sort of they were going a fair distance with those because he was sort of part and parcel of the transition to the vans, you know. And when I worked there, they were building these battery where they push the batteries, change the batteries over, you know, big power pack.
But what did your actual vehicle, how far did that go?
No, I'm not sure. No, because I left. It was running. That was the main thing. It was running, and I was sort of heading out, and yeah. So, and from then I started working for myself. So, I make parts for antique cars, and that's what I've been doing for 40 years. Yeah.
Viv, would you mind just standing in front of the mic so everyone can
Oh,
hear again?
I'm sorry. Is that better? Oh, I'm sorry. Did you hear what I said before? Oh. Well, we'll start the whole thing again.
Got one more question here.
Yes, sir.
With the rack pinion system and coming out of the mini or moke, I've had a few over the years. Have you actually extend it to just cut it in half, or
I just,
the bar of metal in the middle?
yeah, I put a piece in the centre. Yeah. Then you have to change the arm because if you have it the wrong, sort of as you
balance.
bounce, the wheels go like that. Yeah, that was sort of like trial and error, and I hit it all right. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, sir.
You had number plates on the car. What was the process to get it registered?
Well, it was sort of an iffy thing, and it worked well.
Nothing's changed.
Yeah, I think they were.
In those days, if you knew someone, it was okay.
Yeah. And I reckon they were all keen to see how it worked, you see. So it wasn't a problem. Yeah, because one day it was unregistered, and they went out and saw, and someone came up and looked at it, and, and it was registered. So I don't know, pretty good. So I think somebody knew someone. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I bought a car from England out, and this is beside that. Anyway, I had to get the seat belts. I had to take it out to, Regency, or the place before that. Anyway, the chap looked at the car and he said, "Oh, those seat belt position's wrong. It's got to be moved down that far." Anyway, I told my wife, and she said, "Oh, there's a fellow coming from Chrysler going to work out there at the motor vehicles, whatever." And he called me and he said, "Viv, you don't have to worry about it." And it's a Porsche. And he said, "Porsche know where to put the seatbelt bolts, you know." And that was that. Yeah, so funny.
Is it still registered?
I don't think so, no. Yeah. Bruce might need a magic wand or something. Yeah, yeah.
Well, if we could thank Viv for the...
Yes.
Because you've got the video with the number plate, there's evidence that it was a road vehicle registered in this state, which means it is actually registerable.
Yeah,
You can go and get rego for that vehicle.
yeah.
It doesn't run.
I've bought vehicles from interstate before that hadn't been on the road for 20 years,
Mm-hmm.
and I've spoken to Regency about it, and as long as it's a matching numbers vehicle still,
Well, there you
the
go.
paperwork that it had originally,
Yes.
you can just renew it.
Yeah. I reckon I could sell the papers to you, Bruce. Yes. But anyway, the 4 years went pretty quick, you know, and like when I look at it now, it's 50 years ago since I started it, and I can't even believe it myself. Yeah. Anyway, that's how things go. And this is they wanted a drawing of it, and I drew that one night on a board this big, and worked right through the night, well, in 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and I finished it, and I took it there, and it got in the Advertiser, and that was the next day or something. It was crazy, yeah. So, but it was nice to see. It was right on the front of the paper, you know, so it was nice. Yeah, because I used to work there, and so I've been at the berth on the back with the berths and on the front as well. So that was all right, eh? Yeah. So anyway, thank you, Bruce, for allowing me to talk. Yeah. This is what this is. I just thought you might be interested to know what I do, and these are some of the things I've made over the years. So I did a cartoon until about just over a year ago, and it was a friend of mine from the Advertiser. He's in the Chrysler Club, and he said, "Have you got a what do you call it, a name tag, like just a name tag?" And I said, "Yeah." So I gave it to him, and he pinned it up at the Chrysler Club, and this chap with the Hupmobile register, he belongs to some other car club, and he saw my business card, and he phoned me and he said, would you like to pay for an ad in his magazine? And I said, oh yeah, that'll be all right. And I said, I do a cartoon. And he wasn't interested. And so he said, I'll make a block for you. And I said, anyway, I said to the cartoon, no, I'll make a block for you. I said, would you like to see my cartoon? And he said, oh, so, and he wasn't excited, you know, a bit slow. And I said, I'll show it to you. So I went down there and it was called Ben and Ken. And I showed it to him and he says, The Adventures of Ben and Ken the Hupmobile Men. And do you know, I did 100 cartoons from that. And it was, I had a half page. Is an A5 that size? I got half a page. And anyway, I had 2 blocks, so I could only tell a story in 2 blocks. Then one day he phoned and he said, I'm not happy about things. And I said, what is it? And he said, all the work he puts into the magazine, and now he finds they're going to the comics. And anyway, he gave me a full page. And I did 100 cartoons in 25 years, one every quarter. And anyway, last year I said to my wife, I don't think I'm going to do this anymore. And the furthest place I got work from was Detroit. Can you believe that? Somebody from South Australia, his parents lived in Detroit, and he sat down in their home, and on the coffee table was the Hupmobile magazine. And he's reading it, and he says, this guy's in South Australia. And he lived in South Australia, in Adelaide, the other side of Adelaide. And so he brought stuff from his dad's car collection, and I worked on it. And he took it back or mailed it back. I don't know how he got it back. So that was pretty good, yeah. And also I make rapid wire systems. Do you know what a rapid wire system is? It's do you know in the stores they used to put the money and the docket in a wooden, and they pull this thing? Well, Lampson's, I'm sorry? Hello. How long have you been there?
5 minutes.
Yeah, I make rapid wire systems, and these are the things where you pull a cord and it runs along a wire. It's from the sort of late 1800s to the it went up to 1970, and they cleared them out because they put cash registers on every counter after that. And anyway, Lampson heard me, knew about me, because I wanted to find out about something, and they said, oh, would you build these things for us? He said, we don't even know what to do. And so I made these parts, and someone in England found out about it, and he put me on a website, and I supplied parts to Ireland, England the other month, up to Corn year before last, and it's amazing. These things, they just keep wanting to have them, you know, and so that's been really exciting, yeah. Yeah. So anyway, these are the things that I do, and I enjoy doing these things, you know. So I enjoy doing those things. Yeah. Okay. Nice to be here.
These were sent to me last weekend, so they're all a bit new. It's one of our members, Tony. He worked there in 1981 and took these photographs. Not working. Oh, yeah. Yep. Yeah, so it's the same van. Talking about number plates, this is before we had number plates. You could select. It's got EVE 800 and the other one was EVE 801. So I think they did know someone in there before personalised plates.
Magic electric vehicles.
Magnetic tyres, yeah.
Yeah, it's the rear of it. That's the
Battery swapping.
battery pack there, and that battery pack used to come out and they'd shove a new one in, so you didn't have to sit and charge your car. It's just the interior of it. And that's the battery swapping unit.
How many battery swapping stations were there in Adelaide?
Two. There was one at Flinders Uni and one at EVD, which is Electric Vehicle Developments, that built the rest of the
And where were
Bedford
they?
vans.
North or like further
They
away?
I think they were still south of the city, but I'm not sure where.
Wow.
Yep. That's a close-up of it. But yeah, they used to take them 3 minutes. They could do it, back the Bedford up, slide it out, and that would go up or down and put on the racking behind it. That rack there. Then they'd bring it down, slide the next one back in. That was just one of the, and these photos, they're just all the ones that he sent. It's one of the guys that was working there. That's the workshop, the blurry workshop. That's another view. Do you recognise that view?
Yeah, the machine there, yeah.
Yeah, and they had a secretary and a battery charger. And the battery charger I've got at home that came with the Investigator. I'm not sure whether that's it, but it's identical. So I can't actually read the numbers on it. It's a bit blurry. And that's their T-shirt they had made to go down the pub and impress people with. And that's it.